Be honest with yourself and be honest with your fellow breeders. Know your dog's faults. Know your bitch's faults. Know your stud dog's faults. And be willing to say, this dog's not good enough, and move in a different direction. Not every dog should be bred that you breed. And you got to really be open about that.
Welcome to the Better Breeder Chronicles, brought to you by EasyWhelp Premium Whelping Boxes. Elevate your breeding program with EasyWhelp. In today's episode, we visit with Tim Terella of Snoebear Siberian Huskies. Located outside of Erie, Pennsylvania, Tim and his wife Megan are some of the most successful breeders of the modern breed. Highlights of the Snoebear breeding program include winning every major award at the National Specialty, including two-time SHCA Breeder of the Year. In 2024, they were nominated for both Pro Plan and Dog News Breeder of the Year. Currently, their dog, Grand Champion Silver, Crystal Fountain Tanqueray at Snoebear, is the number 2 working dog in the country and number 4 all breeds. He just won the National Specialty and is on an incredible run of consecutive Best in Show or Reserve Best in Show wins, with another one last night. Those who know the Terellas best speak of their admiration for their consistency, dedication, and deep respect for their breed. They also mention their ability to overcome significant difficulties while never losing sight of their vision for the ideal dog. Join me now in welcoming the master of Snoebear, Tim Terella. Tim, welcome to the show, and I'm excited for you to share the Snoebear story with us today. Take us back to the beginning. Tell us the story of your early days in purebred dogs.
I was pretty much born into it all. My parents began in the mid to late 70s, and they had Siberian Huskies that mostly they ran on a sled team and did competitive sled racing, as opposed to the showing side of the breed. And so they showed a little bit, but it wasn't as nothing like what we do now. My dad was super just absolutely enthralled with the sled dog tales of, Iditarod and the Serum Run, and just that independence about the breed and all that history. And then he got his first dog and fell in love with the breed and met my mom, and they continued doing the Siberian thing. And just like a lot of us breeders, you have one and then you get your second, and then you get the bug, and you just keep going and going. And that then transitioned right into myself and my passion for it. I remember my parents telling me stories about I was a little child, and maybe 4 or 5 years old. They'd walk me through the kennel of dogs that they had, and I'd be able to name every one of them right from the get-go. And so they knew I had a passion for it, and just enjoyed everything about them right away. And so we briefly got out of them for a while. Just my parents were, my mom was a nurse, my dad was a construction worker. They working hard and didn't have a lot of time with 2 kids, myself and my brother, to keep going on with the dogs. So they stopped for, it was about 10 or 12 years. They didn't have any Siberians. And then I was like 11 years old, 11 years old, and they decided they wanted another one. So we got another one, and one thing led to another, and we had a whole kennel again. And my parents wanted me to try showing just once. And I did it one time, and that was it. I remember we went to a local dog show in Hamburg, New York, and it was in the summer, and I took my puppy in, and my dad had one in the same class, and there were only the 2 of us, and I beat him, and that was it. I was hooked, and we just, I got stuck with it from then on.
Tell us a little bit more about your parents and their influence on you ultimately as a breeder.
They loved the sledding, and that was their heart, their passion for it. They loved watching the dogs work. And you talk to people that have been on a dog sled team, and the quietness, all you hear is the swoosh of the runners, and watching those dogs work and do their job, and instinctively from the get-go know what they're doing and where they're going. And it's just incredible. It's an incredible feat that the breed can do, and it's just remarkable to watch. And so that really drove my father as far as how he wanted the breed to look, and the anatomical aspect of the breed. And so they drove that functionality home with me from a young age, that it's not just pretty and beautiful, and there's a functionality aspect of why they look and move the way they do. And so that was a huge influence to me, to continue that aspect of it and not get caught up with, I have a beautiful dog and I win some ribbons, so it's a great one. You also have to apply that history and the function of those breeds to the beauty.
Who were the other people in your early years that made a big impact on you?
There were so many. I mean, I have been so fortunate to have such a support system in this sport. And I think that that is something that's very important with any breeder, any person in dogs, having people to work with and learn from. Always, no matter how much success you've had, being able to step back and have a partnership or have people that you can bounce ideas off of is so important. It gives you a fresh set of eyes all the time. We all love our dogs, and we all have our heartstrings on in certain dogs in your breeding program, and sometimes that's not a good thing. And sometimes you can overlook, some faults or some flaws that other people are going to pick up on. And so having people in a team of people to work with, or people you trust, is so important. And I learned that. And Ann Palmer, Highlander Siberians, they've had lots of top winning Siberian Huskies and national specialty winners and Westminster winners. And I've been fortunate as a professional handler to show a lot of their dogs from the time I was a child. Anne and her husband Brian, they also were very influential in sled racing as well, and they again also kind of brought same that function is a priority for our breed to my thought processes and what I'm doing and how important that is. They help me kind of develop, fine tune what I'm looking for as far as the anatomy and the movement on the breed. So they've been just great supporters, and great resources to this day. I still work with them, and it's been now 25 years that I've been kind of tutoring under them. Yeah, another person that was so influential in helping me along the way was Trish Kanzler of Innisfree Siberians. She was best in show at Westminster in 1980 with Innisfree Sierra Sonar. She was just a force in our breed. She was such a great ambassador for the Siberian Husky, and teaching me along the way how to talk to the dogs. And she had a relationship with a Siberian that was just I've never seen it. And being able to witness that, she could put her hands on a dog that have never been in a show ring before, and she would just quiet them. It was amazing to watch, and we miss her. She unfortunately passed away, and she was just so helpful for me from the time I was like 12 or 13 years old. It was I'll never be able to forget that.
Tim, what was the process like in first becoming an integral part of your parents' snow bear breeding program, but then ultimately taking over the reins of that program?
We started out young, being, going outside, taking care of the dogs, and like I said, my parents were more into the sled racing. So when I that was a more of their forefront, and they did show, but not consistently. And so when I got involved and I fell in love with junior showmanship and did that very well, and I got involved with some professional handlers, and they helped me kind of decide that this is kind of the life I want to live. The and so I kind of we kind of paused breeding for a little while, just while I got myself squared away as to where I wanted to go and what I was looking for. And that's the one thing I would say is, when you're breeding dogs, everyone wants to jump into it. and just start with a big winner, or start, and have great success. It took me 15 years to find the direction that I wanted to go with my dogs. You don't, sometimes I mean, if you're lucky, you can start right away and have a plan and attack it. But sometimes it takes some time to discover where you want to go in that journey. And like I said earlier, having a village of people, of mentors that are able to help you along that way, is so important. And so going from, just being a junior handler to taking over the breeding program, you know, it was great. And unfortunately, my father passed away. Oh, it's been about almost 20 years. So we were able to, I took it kind of from there, and always trying to keep in back of my mind the direction that he wanted the dogs to be, as a benchmark, and then kind of put my flair to it on the other end of it.
You mentioned the amount of time you took to figure out where you're going, create your clear mental vision for what you wanted a Snoebear Siberian to look like.
Sure.
Who were the dogs or bloodlines you used to progress towards that vision?
Like I said, Highlander Siberians and their dogs were a very big benchmark for me. They raced them. They won our breeds working and showing trophy, which is, they won that multiple times. That in our club is kind of a really big deal, because it shows that you're out there with your breeding program and you're working them in harness and you're also winning in the show ring. So seeing that there's a dual purpose dog that still can function and still can win in the ring was so influential. And so they've had many dogs over the years that really struck my chord, and were important to me as far as that. And then Innisfree, the Kanslers had I mean, they were the gene pool for a long
Okay.
time, and their dogs had that, had the beauty and the substance and the movement and the athleticism to do their job as well as win in the ring. And so taking both their dogs, you know, eh, and kind of blending them, that's been a big help to get going.
Fellow breeders, see what your breeding program has been missing with Easy Whelp modular whelping boxes. From the durable Easy Classic design to the spacious Easy Classic Tall, Easy Whelp sets a new standard for premium design and performance. Their innovative models were developed for simple setup and maximum safety, with features like the integrated safety rails to protect your next generation. The smooth, hygienic surface allows for quick wipe downs to maintain a sanitary environment. And the new window walled option, which I personally recommend, provides the next level of safety, confidence, and convenience. And for our Better Breeder audience, use coupon code BB15 to save 15% on your purchase. Elevate your breeding program today. Visit easywhelp.com. So, Tim, I know today your wife, Megan, is a big part of Snoebear. Not to get too personal, but how did you guys connect?
We were both junior handlers and both kind of in the same area. I'm from Erie, Pennsylvania, and she's from Buffalo, New York. It's only about an hour and a half apart. And long after we met and were dating, we went back and looked in catalogs and saw we competed in juniors against each other and didn't even know it. So I met her at a dog show in Hamburg, New York, and she was showing golden retrievers, and that was her original breed. And we met, and we, decided that was the thing to do, and we were gonna breed dogs together once we got married. And she kind of fell in love with the Siberian, and they just took away her heart. And I mean, she's more part of this than anybody ever was. I mean, she's taking care of the dogs and managing the kennel when I'm gone, and I'm gone so much handling dogs that, I mean, it's a full-time job. She's a lot of the brains behind what we're doing, and it's great to have someone that not only you connect with in life, but you have the same vision, and that way you can bounce things back and forth, and it's been just amazing. I couldn't do it without her, and it's she's She is Snoebear Siberians through and through.
So, coming from a marriage that's quite similar in those dynamics, do you find that you push each other on certain topics or force each other to kind of really, understand why you believe a certain thing or feel you should go a certain direction?
Even though we have a very similar viewpoint of how we want our dogs to look and what we want the breed to look like, we still have our own eye. And it's so nice to be able to be, we have a litter of puppies at home and I'm gone for a couple of weeks and I can come home and every week you come home, they grow. And so I come home and it's like a fresh look at them every single week. She sees them and she gets attached to them and attached to their little personalities. And, you know, that is so wonderful and it's so great, but it also can be a detriment. You get attached to one particular puppy. And so me being able to come home and, you know, I'll say, that's I know you like that one, but this one's got, better upper arm and this one's got, a little better easier, smoother gait or a better croup. That, she sees it, but sometimes her heart doesn't want her to see it. So, it's great to be able to have that double vision on what we're doing. And I trust her, if I'm there's been numerous times where I'll be gone for 2 weeks on at a time and we'll have people coming to look at puppies and we're down to the wire. We got to decide between these two. And I trust her, she knows what I'm looking for as well. So having that second opinion there is just immeasurable as far as an asset to what we're doing.
So, what are the specific breeding strategies or theories that you rely on as you're managing this bloodline through the generations to maintain and advance it?
To me, the Siberian is most importantly, it's an athlete. It is the quintessential in my eyes, the quintessential dog as far as the most incredible survivor, and it's the most athletic animal we have in dogdom. What they do in the Arctic and in the environments that they have to do their job is so important, and that follows through with their structure and anatomy and all the little fine points of the breed, from length of muzzle to the thickness of their ear to length of the tail, and all those little fine points go directly to the function. And so when choosing a breeding program and what we're doing, phenotype is very important, and being able to follow that and build off of that is what we do primarily. Of course we line breed off of that and we look at pedigrees from that, but I first and foremost make sure that it's a phenotypical match before I move to the pedigrees and go from there. Make sure it's the right style for the bitch that I have and a likeness. I find that a lot of breeders want to breed opposites. They go and say, "Oh, my Siberian is short on legs, so I'm going to breed to a tall-legged dog, and that's going to fix everything." That's not how it goes. You might get a litter of some long-legged and some short-legged. You're not going to get all your puppies medium because that's what you were breeding to opposites. So you got to gradually get there. You have to eh, develop that. And so that's what I said when I go to phenotype. I make sure that we're blending together are similar enough, but have that extra what we're looking to add to it. And then you go and then you look and dissect that pedigree. Are there complementary animals in there? Looking at litter mates. When you're choosing a stud dog, you need to make sure its brothers and sisters are also the highest qualities as well. Breeding to a one-off in a litter of, there's 7 puppies and you got one champion that one champion has what you're looking for. That's great. But if the other 6 puppies in that litter were short-legged and not having the attributes you're looking for as well, you're going to pull from that. You're not just going to get what that dog is. It has a genealogy behind it. And so you're going to bring those aspects also into those breedings. So I really use the genetics and pedigree after we find the phenotypical choice of for our match.
You mentioned something a little earlier that I thought was really interesting about wanting to go type to type. But then a lot of times the question comes up, well, what if I want to go there? And you made a comment about rather than trying to get there in one breeding, potentially getting there in stages. And at that point, it's probably your selection process that gets you there.
Building a breeding program is putting together a bunch of building blocks. You're not gonna jump 3 steps with one breeding. You want to have a plan, and you want to develop it out, and it's going to take some time. Picking an attribute that you want to change, or you want to add to your breeding program, you're probably not going to get it in just the first breeding. You might get a couple puppies out of that litter that have what you're looking for. You might lose some things, you might gain some things, but in order to strengthen it, you got to build off of that. So you get that puppy, and you like I keep saying leg because it's so paramount in Siberian Huskies. We have a dog that's more 50-50 in body style, and you love all the other anatomical factors of that animal, and so we're going to breed her, and you breed to something that's got a little more leg with a similar phenotype. You get those puppies with that leg. It's you want to remember that, because I find that a lot of breeders, a big mistake they'll do is they will recognize what they have in their puppies already. And so when they're choosing their puppies, they may have that puppy with the more leg, but because it looks different than what they're used to always keeping, sometimes they'll lose it. And you'll breed for leg, but you'll see this one that's got great big side gate and this beautiful head, and it looks like its mother or grandmother, and you steer away from what you were trying to get. And they forget that you're doing that breeding for a reason. And so you might have to take a puppy, or might keep a puppy that isn't your style, and give it time, and let it grow up, and let it develop. And it may not be your best in show winner. It may not be your next great one, but that you're bringing in what you were breeding for. And so sometimes you got to give up what you have to gain something else. From there, then you can strengthen that. Then you build off that. Then, oh, I got my leg. It's not as beautiful as, or it doesn't have this or that. Now I can line breed it back on my stuff, and strengthen your other factors, and hopefully maintain what you added to it.
Tim, walk us through your selection process. How do you evaluate the dogs to choose the individuals you want to move forward with?
That's a tough one. I mean, I do it like we do for a dog show. When I'm watching a dog that I'm interested in breeding to, I want to watch it move on its own. I want to see its footfall. I want to see its balance. Our breed has lost a lot of balance in recent times, and they go for breeding for extremes. So this big flying side gate with high kicking rears and flat croups, and it's all wrong. Siberian Husky is moderate and balanced, and so when I'm picking a dog, that's my paramount. And you want to have that athleticism, you want to have the leg, and so I'll make sure right from the get go. First, the dog is balanced. I don't. I'm not interested in extremes or fads or any of that stuff. You can add that stuff once you have your product, and you can add your flair to it, and you're in pretty, and make it appealing. But you got to have the building blocks there and the foundation, and so balance and soundness is so important. And so we go with balance first, and correct proportions, having the right length of leg, and then we watch them move in an easy, as easy as they can be on their own in the yard. I don't find it to be rocket science as far as choosing a good moving dog. I think people, at least in Siberians, they get a little too critical, and looking for fanciness, and it's not necessary.
So, Tim, if you would, describe for our audience, what does a Snoebear Siberian Husky look like?
I think our dogs are right on point with what the standard says for moderate and balanced. And that's so important for us. And so having the proper leg length. So I think a Snoebear Siberian Huskies has more leg from elbow to ground than they do depth of chest. They are slightly longer than tall. We really try to focus on just ease and freedom of motion and light and easy steps. The breed should barely lift their feet off the ground when they're moving and cover as much as they can. And so having that proper leg length and in the proportions to length of back from length of leg really is what we look to do. I want a moderate dog. We don't want too much bone, but we don't want to be too slight. The breed calls for to be a medium dog built to carry light loads over long distances. It shouldn't be as slight as to suggest a sprint racing dog. So you don't want fine bone, you don't want whippity top lines and short bristly coats and extreme croup angles. We want a croup, but not extreme. So everything is moderate and medium, and they shouldn't be as heavy as to suggest a freighting dog like a Malamute or a drafty dog like a Bernese Mountain Dog. Moderate, medium bone. And I think we really, really, really do a good job with that. But they have to have substance and that to survive harsh terrain in the Arctic. So I think our dogs are real athletic. They got beautiful length of neck and the leg length is important. So we really work with that.
How would you say a Snoebear Siberian might contrast with the general breed type our audience might see in the ring today?
I really think overall the breed and our breeders do a good job. I think they most of them are moderate and most of them are they all most of them do look alike. And so I'm not going to say that mine stand out like completely different. Sometimes our breeders forget the balance aspect of it. And so I think when sometimes my dogs don't, where I'm not flying around the ring as fast as I can at the end of the lead. It's all fancy and it looks impressive, but our breed should be shown in a loose lead at an easy pace. It says right in our standard. And so, I've had judges say to me, boy, I wish he'd just go out ahead of you. And I'm like, why? He doesn't need to. He's going easy and covering just as much ground without racing. And I see so much rolling in the top line these days in our breed. That's probably one of the biggest problems. And I think that's a reflection of the balance. You get too much angulation in rear and the straighter front, and they're crossing over underneath. And a lot of people showing them think, well, I'll just fly them around the ring. Look at how great it moves. And in that rocking and rolling and abrupt pounding in the front and then because it's got a flat croup, it's kicking in the rear. That's not an easy moving sled dog. You watch them unharness on a video, and their feet are barely coming off the ground. It's just quiet. And that's one thing when I talked about Trish Kanzler, she preached that to me. Quiet shoulders. Quiet shoulders is a reflection of balance. And if you're watching a Siberian move and a proper one move, feet barely lifting off the ground, top line smooth and easy, there shouldn't be any roll. And that it will reflect the balance front to rear. So, I think most of our dogs do that. And we try. Not all of them, of course. That I don't have a perfect one, but that's what we're trying to accomplish, and we're trying for our dogs to look like.
Here at the Better Breeder Institute, we offer a full suite of digital resources and services developed to educate, support, and promote purebred conservation dog breeders. From free online tools like the Better Breeder Directory and Stud Dog Register, to our growing curriculum of courses, including Website Academy and Business Basics. We offer professional digital services, including email marketing and website design on our world-class Ultimate Breeder platform. Plus, we offer the Better Breeder Certification Program to distinguish purebred conservation breeders who breed to the standard and produce healthy, beautiful, and predictable puppies. We certify breeders who raise the bar with their ethics and breeding practices. At the Better Breeder Institute, we have the missing link to transform your purebred breeding program and achieve your highest goals. Learn more at betterbreeder.org. So, Tim, I'd like to learn a little bit more about the dogs that have shaped the Snoebear story and understand what it was about them that made them special. Who were those dogs?
So I would have to take it back to I was in juniors and I got a bitch from a fellow breeder named Karen Potts, and she shared with me one of her females that she had gotten from Ann Palmer at Highlander, and her name was Foxy, and she was a beautiful, gorgeous, moving, sound gray and white Siberian bitch. Her name was Highlander's Temptress of Jokar,
Okay.
and I got her to start. And she was bred a few times, and her best litter was actually to a dog that had really molded what I've done. And that dog was Coventry's Peace Negotiator. His name was Carter. I was actually handling him for a breeder. That was my first special I ever campaigned as a professional handler. Now, Carter came from an incredible family of dogs. He was line bred on the Innisfree pedigree. His sire was, to this day, one of my favorite Siberians I've ever seen. His name was Innisfree's Chips Ahoy, and that dog he's in a lot of pedigrees worldwide. He's a very influential animal, and so Carter, being a Chip son, I bred my Foxy bitch to him, and that was her best litter that she had. And from there was my real foundation bitch, and to this day, probably my, heart dog that we all talk about was a bitch named Ava. She was champion Snoebear Silver Seduction. I can see her today in all the dogs I'm showing, especially our Jin that we're showing now. He is so reminiscent of her in just body proportions and his style of his silhouette and personality. So I really took her, Ava, as my benchmark in going forward from there. And so she was just that absolute prominent animal that I'm working now towards line breeding on. And we haven't done it yet, but we have plans to really lock in on her in the near future here. But so I took her and I bred her to another Highlander Innisfree dog, combination dog, and we got a bitch named Kendall, and her name was Champion Snoebear Champagne on Ice, and she was reserve winner's bitch at the National, and she was bred a couple of times, and her kids are scattered all throughout our breeding program right now. So it's the bitches really are the keys, and that's really when I think of my prominent animals. I've had a lot of nice males I like and I look forward to using in my breeding programs, but the bitches are the line of bitches is so strong and so important from there. And so I would say I had another dog. Actually, it was Kendall's brother, dog named Snoebear's Absolute Silver. He won some specialties. He's a lot of my ideal of the silhouette and the style of a Siberian that I'm looking for. Uh, Gorgeous up on leg dog, very balanced, not big flying side gait, not short stepping in any way, but just a moderate, balanced, easy moving dog. Work good in harness, and that's something we still do today too, is run our dogs in harness and try to really keep that functionality. So his name was James, and at the time when we had James, everything we had was too related, so we really didn't breed him a lot. I have him frozen. We intend to use that coming up here. And but that's the hard part when we have a good sized kennel, but when you get in certain times where you have a lot of dogs that are all related, and it's like you can't super tight breed them, and so you gotta kind of, I don't know, save some for later, I guess, with frozen. So but I would say coming down from that, now we've got Jin, and he's our everything. He's our product of everything we've done to this point, and pretty close to our ideal of what our breed should look like and move like. And he comes down from that family. And for a time, we had, I think it was 6 generations of dogs coming down from that were all consecutive generations of best in show winners, not all bred just by me. Like I said, we have that group of breeders that we work with that really help us. But I find that strong line of quality is important, and not the awards. The awards come with the dog's quality. It's the awards don't make the dog. So you have that family of dogs that have that strong lineage of being able to reproduce themselves and get those traits you want, and building that along, that really helps continue that strength.
Tim, for our audience that isn't aware of Jin and the incredible year he's having, what's his registered name? And just give a brief synopsis of the year he's had to date.
Sure. His name is Jin, of course, and it's champion Crystal Fountains Tanqueray at Snoebear. And he was bred and co-bred by my wife and myself and our co-breeder in Japan, Hiroyo Shimizu, who we've been breeding dogs with now for, I think it's been close to 15 years, because she co-owned Ava with us. So and she's been super important. We couldn't be where we are without her. She's been a wealth of a resource of, again, another eye, another person to help look at dogs, and a fresh view. And also she's been able to help us with showing dogs in Japan as well as in the United States. But we co-bred Jin together, and we knew when he was born he was special. He he just had this aura about him, this personality walking around our house as a little puppy. And my wife picked him from like day one. There was just y- I never want to. You always hear breeders say, "Oh, I picked this puppy out at birth," and I've we've never really had that. I'm always, "Oh, you can't, you gotta watch them, and they change so much." And I tell you, they were born, and my wife was like, "This is it." And she was right. I mean, right from the get-go. And he's had an incredible year. He was born in our house. We finished him, or right before he was finished, he went to Japan for 2 years, and showed over there, and was the number one Siberian in Japan. And then he came back, and my wife finished him at a specialty before national in 2021. He went back to Japan again, and just came back this last fall in 2024. We got him at the national in October of last year, and his first dog show with me was with my wife in Orlando this past December. And I was showing one of our bitches, and that I specialed last year, and she was number one Siberian last year. And Megan showed Jen and won the breed over everybody there. And she didn't want to go in the group in Orlando because she just didn't want to get involved in that. So she said, "Here, you take him." And I got a group two his first time in the ring in Orlando. And that was kind of it. She's like, "Here you go. Take the lead the rest of the weekend. There's too much pressure on me now." So I showed him the rest of the weekend, and he won all the breeds and cuts in the group and placed a couple of days. And we started out the beginning of the year. Okay, we're going to show him this year is our special. And, obviously people like him. And first dog show of 2025, he went best in show. And then the second dog show, best in show. And the third dog show, reserve best in show. And it just seemed to snowball from there. And Currently most of the year he was number one working dog, and currently he's number two and number four dog all breeds, and he has 30 best in shows and 27 reserve best in shows and nearing 100 group ones. 3 weeks ago won the national. Had an incredible week. I mean, that a week a breeder dreams of. He won the pre-national, won the top 20, won the national, won the stud dog class with two of his puppies. I mean, we just and all under. It's not like at the Siberian National we have different judges. It's not like some breeds that have one judge do the whole national. I think there was like 5 different judges picked him or his children, and it was pretty amazing. And so we're astounded, and we're just so thrilled that the people outside of the breed, because we can't show to breeder judges every week. The people outside of the breed have embraced him and really celebrated him and see what we see in him.
Well, I don't follow the all breed scene that closely, but I can tell you every time a Canine Chronicle post comes up with his picture with another best, as a breeder, I smile.
Right, right. Thank you. Thank you. And that's the thing too. In it having a dog, because I think being a handler, I get to see a lot of this where you'll have certain dogs in a breed that really excel under breeder judges, and they're really ideal for what those breeder judges are looking for. And it could be a completely different animal that's winning at all breed shows, and not that one's better than the other. It's just how people view it. And so to have a dog that breeder judges celebrate and enjoy as well as all breed judges, that's a real special thing, and we're really really proud to have that.
Tim, many people look at successful breeding programs like your own, and they only see the success. What they don't get to see is the rest of the story. What was the biggest challenge or setback you faced in your breeding program, and how did you overcome it?
I think for us it's ever evolving. There's always going to be a challenge, and there's always the next challenge. And I find that at least currently with what's going on with not as many people breeding dogs, at least I don't see, and the decrease of gene pools across the spectrum of breeds is in Siberians. We used to have entries of, you know, 40 a weekend, an average. And I think the average I see a weekend is 6, 7. I mean, it's depleting, and it's very hard to watch. With that, and a lessening gene pool is dealing with health and health problems every breed has. Anybody that says they don't have them in their breed, I don't care. They are not telling the truth, or they haven't bred dogs enough. I mean, plain and simple. You haven't had enough litters if you haven't had a health problem. It's going to happen. Doesn't mean you're failing. It doesn't mean you're doing a bad job. And hearing somebody else's health problems in their breeding program doesn't mean they're doing it on purpose. No, I don't believe anybody breeds dogs and doesn't care. There isn't anybody. So the evolving of dealing with those health problems that can arise and new ones that pop up, I think that's the everlasting challenge, especially with having limited gene pools. And in Siberian Huskies, we have a pretty healthy breed, especially having seen and being involved in a lot of other breeds as a professional handler. The main problem in Siberians is I would say we've had juvenile cataracts, which has been around for a long time and is not really progressive, and early, and you kind of move around it. The big thing is an increase, I would say, of cancers, and I think that's across the board in all breeds, but as well as epilepsy. And that's kind of a taboo thing that no one wants to talk about, and no one wants to be honest and real about it. I've produced it. I'm going to produce it again. It's going to happen. But being able to recognize that and move with that, you not throwing an entire breeding program away because one pops up. that's unrealistic. So, and trying to stay evolved with the science that, people are trying to discover why or what. And I mean, I think it's going to be pretty hard. They don't know what causes it in people. So in dogs, it's just as challenging. On top of it, there's so many outside sources for it. So I think that's I think that's the biggest challenge with the health aspect of being a breeder and having a breeding program.
Are you preparing for your first litter? Or do you want to outfit your whelping room in style? If so, check out Whelping Bundles from Easy Whelp. The Easy Whelp Starter Pack includes a modular whelping box, heating combo, and reusable pad. Step up to the Essentials, Pro, or Elite bundles to add a variety of premium whelping necessities and accessories. Ensure your whelping operation is world class with Easy Whelp bundles. Visit easywhelp.com today. Tim, do you have any ideas for how we can better evangelize the value of purebred dogs and conservation breeders to the general public?
I think we've just been demonized publicly, and it drives me nuts. And I remember being in high school. I worked at a vet clinic for like 3-4 years, just as a kennel boy, pretty much. And the vets there, they were good, they were great vets, but they just talked negative about dog breeders, and it was all about rescue, rescue, rescue. And rescue has its importance, and it's a great tool, but it's being exploited. And you know, in the general public thinks we're bad that we breed dogs, and I mean, I hear it on a daily basis. It's really sad to listen to, and I think we got to get back to the basics of having AKC purebred dogs be a status. Like, you used to be able to go to the park and you'd see someone walking down, with their German Shepherd or their German Shorthair Pointer, and they'd be proud. This is my AKC registered German Shepherd. You don't hear that anymore. You hear, "Oh, I've got this is my doodle, this is my rescue, this is my whatever." And the general public doesn't care about AKC registered dogs. And we got to get somehow develop a program or something to reach out and really show how important it is that we're here as breeders, because we love our dogs and we are passionate about our breeds that we're involved with, and we want to breed healthy, loving companions. And that's got to be, that's just got to be more of a popular topic anymore. And I don't know I don't know how to do it. Someone's got an idea, great. Let's get on board, but it's got to start grassroots back at the public, just in general.
Well, and don't you think a first step there too is breeders have to stop hiding their light under a barrel? They need to be proud of what they do. They need to be willing to tell the story to the general public about their breed, why their breed is special, and be proud of them. Don't hide.
Right. Absolutely. I think that's very important. For a while, you didn't want to say you're a breeder. You didn't want to talk about that. You get your hair cut and someone asks, what do you do? Oh, I don't breed dogs. You don't want to say that, because God knows you could have someone show up the next day, find your house on Google and show up and confiscate your dogs because you have too many. It's crazy. We have to be, like you said, you got to be outward, and we got to be in the public's eye. And if we're not in the public's eye and we're hiding, it's that people think there's something wrong, and you're demonized, and it's that's not the case. We're all doing this the right way.
And truly, how many of those fears are truly justified?
Oh, not really.
Yep.
Not really. It's just gossip and talk.
Tim, current breeders are having to deal with several new challenges, several of which you've mentioned tonight, including there being fewer breeders, contracting gene pools, the loss of major bloodlines in many breeds. Do you have any ideas for how today's breeders can succeed in the face of these current challenges?
we got to work together. And I see this as a problem in most breeds, and there's so much finger pointing, due to competition, and this person's beat me, so I don't like their dogs. And the more people do that, we already have a decreasing gene pool. We need to work together. And if people aren't willing to breed together, or people are holding their breeding programs ransom, essentially. You can't breed to my dogs. These dogs aren't available. I have them and you want them, so I have status. It's like it doesn't help anybody. That is nothing but vain and self-absorbed behavior that is not good for the breeds. We breed dogs to drive the breed forward. We breed dogs to maintain and have a breed in the future. We're, the purebred preservation breeders. You can't be a preservation breeder if you're not letting people breed to your dogs, or are not selling nice puppies to other breeders.
Amen.
That is just it's just unfathomable, and I see it all the time. It's I see it in my breed. It's detrimental, and they don't care, but it's unfortunate, and that's the only way we as breeders, with what's going on in the current culture of dogs, are going to be able to weather the storm and have breeds to breed in the future. We got to work together. You got to develop your village, and you got to build from that village, and you got to talk, and there has to be open dialogue. This dog produced this. It's not that dog's fault. There are other dogs involved in it. So we know what we can and can't not mix together. And if there's not an open communication about it, and everyone's hiding, I mean, that was the protocol. When I was a kid, you never talked about, oh, I produced a dog with seizures. I produced a dog that died of cancer at whatever. No one talked about it. They just pointed fingers. And the more we educate and the more we work together, the more success we're going to have and be able to develop from that. And that's the only way I think it's gonna keep going forward.
Now, you make such a good point, there about the competition and holding dogs back, from certain people. Kathy Russ calls that breed selfishness. Megan Reese Bassel's episode drops tomorrow. I believe the title of it is Compete in the Ring, Not in the Box, the Whelping Box.
Bingo.
We hear
Absolutely.
that time and time again from these great breeders, of how important that is. Here at the Better Breeder Institute, we strongly believe we must begin treating our fellow breeders as partners and collaborators. There is no other way, in the face of the challenges we're facing, that these breeds are going to be able to advance or even survive if we don't change our mindsets.
Right. I couldn't agree more. And that Megan Reese Basil's way she put that's perfect. And she's such a great influential breeder with her Welsh. It's and that's a small gene pool. And learn from other breeds. That's one thing that I absolutely am so fortunate, as far as being a handler, and being able to work with other breeders of other breeds. You learn so much, not just within your little breed, and your little group of people. I have taken so much influence, and I bounce things off of people in other breeds all the time. Sandra DeAndrea of Nanook Malamutes, who's now one of our AKC reps. I mean, I've learned so much from her talking breeding dogs, and she's been a huge influence of mine, as far as any question I have, line breeding or this or that, or how did you do this? Being able to go and ask other people about that. Doug and Jamie, the classics. I talked to Doug a lot about asking him questions, and it's important to use other breeds and use other breeders' knowledge and bring that to yours.
Another topic that comes up time and time again on the show: get outside your breed.
Yep, yep, absolutely.
Tim, how has your vision or goals for your breeding program changed over the years?
You got to be willing to change. Number one, you got to be willing to move in a different direction. If something's not working right and something's not progressing the way you want it to, as far as a type or a style or a certain family of dogs, you got to be able to cut and move. And so I think that's super important to be able to work on the fly and adjust.
What does success in your breeding program mean to you today compared to when in the past?
I think it's changed a lot. I mean, when you first start, I think you're really looking, you want to win, and that's the most important thing in your mind. Oh, I want to have a big winner. I want to have a best in show winner or a specialty winner. But the longer you do it, and the longer you are involved in a breeding program, watching other people have success with dogs that are out of your dogs, I think that's just as exciting and as much of a thrill as doing it yourself. And so I think that changes. I think you lose that little bit of a selfishness. You kind of achieve what you set out to do, and watching other people do it with your dogs is just remarkable.
It's a great feeling. What has you optimistic about the future of your breed?
I think our breed generally is headed in the right direction, as far as people still wanting them to look and work in harness, and being able to do both, and show and be beautiful, and win in the ring, and also have that. So I'm optimistic because I see breeders striving for that. We just had our national a couple weeks ago, and that's all you hear. That's everybody's talking about, is having those right attributes to still do the job and preserve that aspect of our breed.
What do you feel your fellow breeders should be most focused on today?
Back to basics with anatomy. I think they really got us to continue to look at balance and proportions and soundness. The lack of balance is a problem. A lot of people breed to win and breed for flash, or the flavor of the day, and without having that building block of a balanced animal in mind.
If there was one current day master breeder you'd like to see featured on this show, who would it be and why?
Sarah Murphy, with her Abethan hounds, she's doing a great job. She's having a great run with one of her bitches that she's showing. And again, she has a very unique gene pool. Being an Abethan hound, they don't have as many as most other breeds, so they're kind of rare. And seeing what she's being able to put together with such a limited gene pool is really impressive.
Is there a breeder you'd like to see featured on the Better Breeder Chronicles? Then go to betterbreeder.org/nominate to let us know. We are looking for master breeders, whether they are highly acclaimed or they work quietly in anonymity to move their breed forward. Better Breeder Chronicles puts those individuals on their rightful pedestal and shares their story with the purebred dog world. Nominate your most respected breeder today. Go to betterbreeder.org/nominate. Thinking back over your journey in Siberians, what are you most proud of?
I'm proud of continuing the legacy that my father had, and it's not so much winning, it's not so much any form of accolades or accomplishments. It's just continuing to promote the breed. It was my dad's everything. It was his heart. It was all he cared about. It was his outlet, and he being able to keep that going and hoping my kids continue it. I think that's probably what I'd be most proud of.
I've got to think there's times where you have dogs in harness that you think about him.
Of course, that's every time I'm out, I hear him telling me, get rid of that dog. He can't run. And that's it was just so important to him, and in us maintaining the running, and we do it every fall, winter, as much as I can with my schedule, with handling dogs. A couple years ago, I took 3 weekends off. It scheduled it off in January, February, and had races planned. And we had 200 miles of training done before January. We were working the dogs. We had a great team together. I was so excited to go to my first race in years. I haven't been to one since I was a teenager. And actually, the last race I went to was with my dad. And so we were all excited. And I took those 3 weekends off of dog shows, and there was no snow. And so they all canceled. And so it was kind of such a big letdown. It's been hard the last couple of years to really kind of rebound and regroup and put all that work into it, because it is so much work to do. To load dogs up, and you've got to feed and water them properly so they don't bloat, and they're hydrated and they're nourished so they have energy to run. And then you go out, you got to go to the place where you run the dogs, which is never out your back door, and you got to find the place, and then you got to run them, and then that's the quick part. That's done in 20 minutes, and then you turn around and you got to let them rest before you load them up and load them all up. And in the fall, they're covered in mud, and you got muddy crates, muddy clothes, muddy dogs, and you got to get them cleaned up and go home and do it again the next day. And it's a lot of involved effort, but it's taught me so much about our breed. And it's important. I think people that are breeding dogs, that have dogs that have an athletic aspect to it or a job, get out and try it. You don't have to do it. It doesn't have to be your foremost thing you're working at. But I think if you can get out and do it, it's going to really bring an eye opening experience to what you're doing when you're breeding program. It can really change a direction, or it can really inspire you in another way.
Tim, to that aspiring breeder who's listening to the Snoebear story today, if there was one thing you'd hope they take from your story that could help them in their own journey, what would it be?
Honesty. Be honest with yourself and be honest with your fellow breeders. Like I was talking earlier, in regards to health, or even in general your own dog, without getting, we all love our dogs, and not without getting kennel blind on an animal. You be honest with yourself. Know your dog's faults. Know your bitch's faults. Know your stud dog's faults, and be willing to say this dog's not good enough, and move in a different direction. That's important. Not every dog should be bred that you breed, and not every dog should be a foundation bitch or a foundation stud dog. And so, if you're honest with yourself about the qualities or the health that you have or the health you're producing, and you're honest with other breeders, if someone wants to breed their bitch to your dog, don't do it just because you want to see puppies out of your dog.
Yep.
Make sure that bitch matches your dog and phenotype. Make sure the pedigrees match. If you do a litter, and just to do a litter because you want to see someone breeding to your dog, you're going to have puppies out there that you don't want representing your dog,
Correct.
that they don't match properly. And so be honest about it. Be willing to turn down a really nice, or a big winning animal that comes to breed to your dog. Be willing to turn it down, and not out of spite, but just because it doesn't match the dog's attributes, or the dog's, or the maybe it's they both have the same faults. And that's so important that you got to really be open about that.
And finally, after your breeding days are done, how do you want breed history to remember Snoebear Siberian Huskies?
I hope people remember us as breeders that were honest about what we did, and we cared about the breed first and foremost, and we cared about the breed's history, and we cared about preserving the breed's function, and having dogs that look like they could still do their job, and still were beautiful, and moved great in the ring. And you know winning is great, but having dogs that are remembered in a gene pool That's more of an eternal attribute there.
Tim, for breeders that want to learn more about you and your dogs and your breeding program, you have a very nice website. Congratulations on that. Where can breeders find that?
Yep, it's www.snoebearsiberians.com, and my wife built it herself. She has no training at all in website designing. She
It can
just
be done.
worked hard at it, and we get compliments on it all the time. And yeah, we love it.
As the website guy, congratulations. Nice job.
Thank you. Thanks.
Tim, this conversation has been great. Thank you for sharing the Snoebear story with us today.
Oh, you're welcome. It was a pleasure.
That's it for this chapter of the Better Breeder Chronicles. We hope you found the Snoebear story with Tim Terella captivating and that it will inspire you to pursue your highest goals in your breeding program. Make sure to click subscribe so you don't miss the next episode. At the Better Breeder Institute, we encourage all conservation dog breeders to embrace your fellow breeders as partners and collaborators rather than competitors and rivals. With the unprecedented challenges we all face today, successful breeding programs can no longer operate on an island. Our purebred dog breeder community must come together with everyone pulling in the same direction. This is crucial if we're going to successfully preserve and advance our beloved breeds. I'm Matt Stelter, closing the book for today. Best wishes to you and your breeding program from all of us at the Better Breeder Institute. We'll see you in the next chapter. Take care.